Hey everyone, you're listening and watching Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin, and I'm excited to welcome you to this channel, to this vlog YouTube channel, this experience. This has been a tragic day already. This is a day where the battlefield has shifted seemingly from one country to the other, to another, even though there was, the war didn't stop in Ukraine, but our attention has definitely shifted today to Israel, where over 3,000 rockets were fired from Gaza. 200 over 200 people were murdered. 1,100 people were over 1,100 were injured, and more than 10 were kidnapped by terrorists. And this is something that is going to be an unfolding situation, and we're going to be coming back to this, and we're going to be seeing how this unfolds, and what how the state of Israel is, it appears to come together over its differences, because nothing can bring people together like an external existential threat. Isn't it amazing? So how are these events viewed from Ukraine, from Russia? How is the Russian speaking world looking at this? Well, they're seeing what's going on in Israel, first of all, as a connected piece, something that is connected to what we see right now happening in Armenia, something that there were, even in Georgia and in different places around the world, wherever Russia gets involved, and there is upheaval, unrest, and this is something that Russian people, and this is what's interesting, is that Russian people have, or people from Russia, or the holders of the Russian passport, have been aware of this for a long time. They knew that their state was, well, essentially a state sponsor of terrorism. This is something that was considered to be such a part of state policy that really was just kind of like, well, we support communist parties around the world. That seems pretty close to supporting terrorism by today's standards, but nonetheless, uh, uh, we had a world where Soviet Union was involved in foreign affairs of other countries through a variety of schemes. They were funding communist parties all over the world, and since Putin has come to power, we know that Kremlin regime has been funding and sustaining and supporting extremists from all over the world, whether they are in Europe, whether they are in Africa, whether they are in the United States. This has just been, well, policy of Russia to create and support instability in the world, because as we now know all too well, you can get pretty far on just trying to create some chaos. And so when Russian people look at what happened in Israel, and they look at the calendar, and they see that it says October 7th, which is birthday of Vladimir Putin. Today, the barbarian monster is turned 71 years of age. We don't know how old his duplicates are. I'm sure there's a variety of ages there of all his stunt doubles. That it has become pretty comical to what extent Putin, has surrounded himself with stunt doubles, where one stunt double is willing to go out there and hug and kiss people, and another totally different person is willing to answer questions from reporters at a distance. So you know that they're like different people, even if they look alike. So for a monster like this, there's got to be pretty monstrous birthday presents. And Putin already gained notoriety because in 2006, on his birthday, Anna Politkovskaya, who was a famous investigative journalist, was murdered. And it's really kind of a interesting concern that I have, is that we try to, like, we took our special forces that killed Osama bin Laden. They took his ashes and they spread them somewhere over the ocean, so there wouldn't be a place where people could go and pay homage to that monster. But with something like with Putin, what we have right now is this day, October 7th, that can on some level rise to a level of mayhem celebration, day of chaos in a way. And it is worrisome because uh, we had, you can, in America, we look at what happened today in Israel, and the big terrorist attack, or however you want to call it. I wonder how you would like to call it. How do you call it? Write in comments. Let me know. What do you think? What happened? Who are the people? Well, Hamas, that conducted the attack. But that was something that, by one measure, could have happened 50 years plus one day after Yom Kippur War, or it could have happened exactly on the day of Putin's birthday. Now, there are a variety of reasons why it makes sense for Russia to agitate situation in Israel. um, well, Israel is, they are getting closer to. There's going to be an agreement where Saudi Arabia may potentially recognize Israel's right to exist, and then form a military union potentially with the United States. All of these kinds of developments are trouble for sure, and they need to be stopped. That's one way to look at it. Or it could be Putin's birthday, or it could be trying to stop a geopolitical situation that is moving out of Putin's control, or it could be just sowing chaos wherever he can. Um, but we see a pretty clear pattern. Not to mention, just today or yesterday, information came out that before his passing, Prigozhin was involved with attempted coup in Moldova. So attempted coups, whether it's Moldova, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's January 6th in the United States, there are a lot of patterns that need to be acknowledged and need to be paid attention to. I'm curious if you have any questions for me that I can say right now. We have, well, it says Biden was told that over 1,500 died in Israel. This is that's a little that's a huge number. Let's go with much less than that. All right, over 300. This is just dreadful, and I think it seems like the hostage situation potentially can be the biggest hurdle, because I don't know how many buildings there are in Gaza, but they can be destroyed. But what do you do to get people back? And that is huge. So again, looking at what happened in Israel, from looking at kind of Russian channels, and there is practically celebration, because what they see is attention of the West has been taken off Ukraine and shifted to Israel, which is great, because that means that now that Russia can continue doing what it is doing, and with a little bit less pressure, because, well, now we're concerned about Israel and what's going on over there. There's a kind of a dreadful thought that has occurred to me as I've been thinking about this over the past day or so, is that there's been a lot of people who have escaped Russia over the last year and a half, since February 24th of 2022, when the big war started against Ukraine. And they went to these countries where, because most countries would not accept these runaway Russians. Few countries did, and they are such as Armenia or Georgia or Israel, where a lot of Jews went. And there's been a fair amount of discussion whether it's been to Putin's advantage or not to have open borders, because the difference between Soviet Union and Russia today is that one of the several differences is that Soviet Union had the Iron Curtain. But right now, if you're able to get through all the other countries, you can kind of get in and get out of Russia if they don't arrest you in a process. But the borders by themselves, there's people are able to technically cross the borders. And if you have these people who didn't want to protest and instead they chose to run away, which is reasonable, which is human, and they went to nearby countries that Russia is clearly working on causing more chaos in, if either taken over, as I mean, right now there are concerns whether Armenia is going to be able to remain an independent state. Hopefully, we're not that far into these worries, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty that is going on right now, and that is clearly being driven by one regime, one person, and that is an interesting question from Kremlin. So let's say you've run away to this country that is now being later attacked by Russia, either directly or through proxies like terrorists in Israel. Then all those people that could have been fighting Russia in Russia and decided to leave can now be still attacked by Russian regime outside of Russia, and just as they can be killed now in Israel, they can be killed in Armenia, in Georgia, in all of these. It's crazy. So this is where the realization that we are up against an evil that is lost all sorts of recognition of what is possible, what is not possible, what is advisable, what is not advisable, what is a good idea, what is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea, and is clearly just looking to take over more states, more countries, and we are in a brand new Cold War that with periodic very hot flashes. Now, it is important to acknowledge that Putin, even though he is an emperor, I don't know, something like that, Tsar Vladimir Putin, um, he really is a part of formerly known as KGB, currently known as FSB power structure, which is secret police, which essentially runs Russia. It's the first country in the world, in the history of the world, that's run by its secret police. And so, should Putin not be there, there will be another representative of the secret police organization that will likely to take his place, because that's who controls all power in Russia. This doesn't mean they're communists. This doesn't mean they're socialists. They're just run by secret police. So, on some level, getting rid of Putin really doesn't solve much of a problem, because the next one's going to be, Mr. Putin version 2.0. But my impression is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but in these kind of personality driven regimes, any person who is different is going to be different, and they're going to have different priorities, different quirks, different crazies. Even when we see different secretary generals of communist party that have taken over and run Soviet Union, even though they're all members of communist party, they were all very, very different. So on some level, whoever comes after Putin is probably going to be from FSB as well. But on the other hand, a different king is going to be a different king. So I think that that is something that I also wanted to kind of get out there, because I think it is very important. This is a question, I think, that is another question that is being asked of Israel after all of this, because if there's such a you know axiomatic basic understanding among Russian speakers that Kremlin is behind this kind of what happened, the attack that happened today, then probably in Israel they understand this as well. So then the question is, how much longer are they going to be kind of in Israel trying to work in both sides and maybe just support Ukraine? Because as was pointed out by advisor to President Zelensky, Mikhail Podolyak, this is Russia sowing chaos all over the world, and defeating Russia in Ukraine is going to mean more stability for Israel. This is all interconnected, and this is in a way what makes this whole puzzle so much worth kind of taking a step back and seeing it yet again, kind of the bigger picture, because we are just looking at really an interesting set of very similar patterns. We see a lot of destruction, we see a lot of chaos, we see a lot of it seems like power plays. We see a lot of people acting without any concerns for ethics or morals, and it can be kind of confusing. But I think that if we look for patterns, patterns certainly do emerge, and there is evidence to back those things up. Now, similarly, when, for instance, we look at what happened in our Congress and what's going on right now and the dysfunction in Washington, to Russians, it's either seems like, yay, this is wonderful because now the West is going to be lost in its own dysfunction and we're going to be doing great, or they're saying the opposite, depending on people. And then they're saying, look, this is the Kremlin having impact on what's happening in Washington. Wow, we have the power. So either way, I don't know that those are all good messages that we want to send. So this is what I think I wanted to highlight today, because I think it is important to do that, because when we look at Israel, when we look at events, we see things that are happening in front of us, but it's hard for us to put things in any sort of a context. And there's a lot of context because there's certainly context of Israel itself and its own relationship with Palestinians and its own relationship with people around it. But at the same time, when we see a coordinated, well-funded attack, military attack that is executed in a military, well-trained style, where is this coming from? It's either coming from Russia or it's coming from Iran, who happens to be now one of Russia's biggest allies. So it's coming through. It cannot be, happening without Russia playing a role in this. And it's something that you may recall President Bush Jr. spoke of axis of evil. And at the time, he said that it was Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Well, North Korea and Iran are still on that list. It was a very handy expression by David Frum about that axis of evil countries. And even though I appreciate the fact that he, I think, even maybe apologized for his writings and his statements at the time, but be it as it may, we still have Russia that is most clearly part of this axis of evil that now involves North Korea and Iran and Russia. And there's a kind of a question mark about China, but perhaps it is impolite to suspect someone when you really are quite certain. So I think that there's a lot of context that needs to be taken into consideration, and I think we should also ask questions ourselves. There's obviously a lot of information out there, and I invite you to do research. I think it is, people say, oh, I've done my own research and I found things. Okay, you know what? It is part of the thing is that we do have to do research. There's an interesting statement from Turquoise. Republicans always liked Putin, and that is something that I personally have struggled with, because in the past, even with my political views, um, being pretty progressive, I've always enjoyed speaking to Republicans about foreign policy, because I feel like that is really, and their concern, a historic concern about communism and Russia and Bolsheviks, and was very real, and I always appreciated that sober look at our national security. So to say that Republicans love Putin and they found each other, I think that there's something to be said for liking authoritarian leaders, and it's good to have successful role models in life, but then not all role models end up being role models forever. Think of Elon Musk, perhaps, or former president that I think is, I don't know if he was hero for any. Well, he was hero for some. When is it? What is it going to take? I think is what people in Russia and Ukraine are curious. At what point are we going to look at Donald Trump and go, "Wow, maybe he shouldn't be president"? Because right now, people back in the former Soviet Union kind of wonder if we're going to elect Trump here again because it looks like it could. And then I explained that no, no, no. The elections. You have to understand the elections are in a year from now. We're discussing how people are looking after fifth mile of a marathon. So who knows who is going to be there by the end, and there's lots of information that's going to come out, and Trump's got trials, and it's going to be a lot of information will come out, but a lot of information came out with January 6th committee, right? And then still and here we are. So it's as Hillary Clinton said, what is it going to take for this fever to break? We shall see. But in the end, it falls on us as voters to go and deal with this. And this is what I find, again, whenever people ask about what's going to happen with Trump and what's going to happen with courts, and is he going to be president? And my answer in the end is that it's going to be up to us, the voters, because there is going to be courts, there's going to be trials, there's going to be all sorts of obstacles in Trump's way that are going to be placed there by the system, by the institutions that he's trying to thwart, that are trying to stop him. But in the end, if we, for some odd reason, decide to vote Trump back in, well, then I guess we get what we deserve. But the system hardly will be able to contain him at that point, really. However, if we as voters, we the people, say no to another term of Donald Trump, then I think that all the other things that are piling up and catching up to Trump are really going to catch up to him. Although, on the other hand, I do not, I do see sense in opinion that Trump is going to be running for office for the rest of his life, because that's going to be his main business now. He's running for president. So we shall see how all of that pans out. In the meantime, I want to express one more time my condolences to everyone and their families who's in Israel right now. I think that is a place that is special to me. I've been standing up for underdog forever. That's been something that's just been crucial to my worldview and my philosophy, is to stand up for underdog. And right now, clearly, underdog is Ukraine. And even though strategically Russia has lost, it's going to be probably, but potentially, a while before Ukraine officially succeeds and Russia officially signs that capitulation that it really should. Really, it's really best for Russia to sign the capitulation as soon as possible, because the costs for Russia are just continuing to escalate. But being ethnically Jewish, not religious, ethnically Jewish, I do hold a special place in my heart for the state of Israel and its right to exist. I think that I've never been to Israel. I don't know if I'll ever make it to Israel. I was kind of thinking about going this year because, 75th anniversary of the state of Israel, and I have some friends and relations there. It would be kind of cool to go, but hasn't happened yet. But you know what? Doesn't matter, because it's underdog with a special place in my heart, and I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna speak up for it, and I'm going to try to remember the bigger picture. But I am also going to wear my heart on my sleeve. So I think that it is really important to speak up for what you care about, and to take pride in things that you like. because if you can be proud of things that you stand up for, then you can feel good about yourself and you can share it with the world. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have a question for Marina Rafalovich. Um, where were Israeli intelligence? How could that happen? I think that is something that is going to be worked on and determined for a long time. There's going to be a lot of investigations, and all I can say is, honestly, with all due respect, I feel that questions that how could that happen are um, questions that really warrant big research answers. They don't warrant kind of just a straight up emotional response. So I will stay away from that. Um, I think that one of the things we have to accept in life is that things happen. There's going to be terrible things, there's going to be crimes, there's going to be things happen that we don't want to see happen. The question is, what are the consequences? What happens for those actions? Are there consequences or are there no consequences? When you have Vladimir Putin, who lives with impunity because there is no consequences, then we have what we have. But Israel is still a democracy, and there's going to be consequences, and there's going to be investigations, and those that can be and should be held responsible to avoid having this occur again in the future, I'm sure will be. Or this will be a huge conversation in Israeli society that ultimately I feel will move society forward. But as it is, this is just an amazing day, and not in a good way. And as we know from watching the state of Israel, sometimes they need a few days to win a war. And I will say this. I was doing an interview. I was giving an interview to a vlogger who is not Jewish, and he's a Tatar, Ruslan Aysin. And we were discussing, he mentioned some of the books on his bookshelf before we started the conversation. And of course, people want to know about American politics. That's usually the kind of stuff I talk about. And, but somehow it came up that he was reading books about history of Jewish people because he feels like his people, Tatar people in Russia, can learn a lot of lessons from Jewish people about how they survived and how they persevered and how they succeeded. And I went, this is so great because, I feel like sometimes when we talk about history of Jewish people, we talk about all the tragedy and suffering, and as the song says, they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat. So, every Jewish holiday. But there's a different way. There's a history of overcoming, and I think that is a really much more optimistic and uh, joyful view that I choose to take. That history of Jewish people has been overcoming challenges, and I am sure that this is going to be another obstacle and a challenge that the state of Israel and the Jewish people will overcome. Because our history says that we have been able to overcome so much. There's no way that this will stop us. So I believe in, the good will win. That's just kind of my mindset, my philosophy. And, and I know that I'm right. So with that in mind, just a matter of time, right? It's just a question of time. Subscribe to this channel, press like, distribute this video if you dare to do so, and I'll be back on from time to time to talk to you about all the amazing things that are happening in my Russian language travels, and I look forward to sharing those with you. Slava Ukraini и Героям Slava. This is Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin. Take care.